Hi, and welcome to this edition of Flaming Viking Tours and Drottningholm Stories. Today we have a story about Drag King Gustav III. Now, Gustav III liked to play dress up. He was known for raiding Livrustkammaren, the Royal Armory, and getting costumes from many years ago, such as from the reign of Gustav Vasa, who he adored and in fact wrote a play about. He also designed the national court dress, and these were costumes for good weather and bad weather, and ones that you would use at the palace behind me, or you'd use out at the summer palaces like Ekelsund Slott, and also out at Lovisa Ulrika's Chinese pavilion. Now, he designed these in 1778, and again, there were two sets. So the first set for the palace here was quite attractive. And he got the idea for doing these, or kind of based this philosophy of the costumes, first of all on Voltaire and a quote from him that someone sent him a letter. And also it was something to prevent people from spending too much money on luxury items. A lot of money was flowing out of the country for luxury items, and so they wanted to kind of simplify the dress, was part of it. And this quote from Voltaire is from a letter by Gustav Philipp Kreutz, who wrote to the king and said, "Nations should be themselves. They should only imitate each other in what is good and never what is capricious. The ruler of the Swedes, who doesn't overlook anything, realizes this wholly and fully. And he is going to give his people the greatest of all possession, manners. Give him my humble greetings and tell him that I honor him as a benefactor of humanity, an example for kings. I am dying and I am taking that feeling to my grave as comfort for me." Now, every morning the king would put a playing card on his door. And if it was bad weather, it looked like this, the King of Spades. The members of the court would send their pages to go check how they should dress for that day, and also the day's program. The problem was the king determined the weather, like he determined the time. If Gustav was an hour late to a dinner or some function, everybody had to set their watches back because the king is never late. When the King of Spades was on the door, that meant bad weather. They stayed at the palace. And for men, this was a really beautiful costume in black with red trim. It was based on Carolinian costumes, and also had some references to the Renaissance. The Carolinian era was right before Gustav III and his father, and those are Kings Carl or Charles 10, 11, and 12. For women, it was black and white trim, and it followed the fashion of the time for women, but it had Renaissance sleeves and also a Renaissance collar. When the weather was good at Drottningholm, and the king decided that it was good weather because it was up to him, then this would be hung on his door, the King of Hearts. And that meant that they're going to go out to someplace like this, the Chinese pavilion, or Ekelsund Slott, which was out in the countryside, and they'd be in the country. Then it was the country style of national court costume. This was called Ekelsundsdräkt. It was also quite beautiful. And the problem with this, that the king decided the weather, was that he was pretty fickle, as Hedvig Elizabeth Charlotte would attest to in her diaries. And he could change his mind all morning long for the convening of the court in the afternoon. The members of the court would have to send their pages back and forth to his door and see what were they supposed to wear today. How is the weather according to the king? And it would be 1 minute to wear the court dress for the palace, and the next minute it would be the court dress for here. So the ladies who, it took some time to get themselves together and to get all the pieces put together, and they had to have help from their maids. They would get dressed, they'd be ready to go, and then they'd find out, nope, change your clothes. And nobody liked this. And they got rather irritated with them, and this is one of the things that Hedvig Elizabeth Charlotte would complain about in her diary. This thing with the court costumes, it kind of led to a stilted atmosphere. And one of the critics of the Gustavian court was the architect Carl Fredrik Adelkrantz, and he said in a quote, this is how he summed up court life at Drottningholm Castle. He said, "A lady of the court farted and ran off in shame and died." That's it for today about the national court costume. I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for your time.